gotta be detailed, precise, and informed.
That's DPI.
Welcome back, everybody, to That's DPI. I'm Zach, and that is Tyler over there. And welcome to week 3 of That's DPI's draft coverage. We are so excited to bring you both North divisions, the AFC and NFC North, for this episode. We also have a ref call of the week, not to skip out on ref call of the week. We would never do such a thing to you, the audience. But Tyler, what are we covering today at the end of the video for our ref call of the week?
We are covering the Raiders Holy Roller. If you know what that is, you can stay tuned. If you don't know what that is, you're going to figure out what that is. And I promise you, it's a rule that you've seen in action. But we are also 2 weeks away from our live draft special. The night before the draft, we will be on live doing a full mock draft. And we are also 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, where Zach and I will be in downtown Kansas City covering the draft at a special That's DPI on location.
We take the draft seriously
here. The AFC and NFC North.
But yeah, great call outs, Tyler. We've got a ton of great draft content coming up for you guys. But we are going to get started with the AFC North, and the Cleveland Browns are on the clock twice that evening, once at 6 and once at 24. So I will pass it to you for who you think the pick will be at 6.
So at 6, a lot of the experts are predicting wide receiver to go to Cleveland. It just depends on which wide receiver. Carnell Tate seems to be a favorite, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. But Mekhi Lemon, am I saying that right, Zach?
I think so.
Okay. Mekhi Lemon, I apologize to Mr. Lemon if I am mispronouncing your name. But the wide receiver out of USC is also being mocked. And the difference between those two guys really comes down to what the Giants do at 5. The mocks that have Lemon going to the Browns are the ones that have Tate going to the Giants. Those that don't have Tate going to the Giants have him going to the Browns. But a wide receiver at number 6 definitely seems to be the trends going on right now.
Yeah, that's what I have as well. I have Mekhi Lemon, going at 6 to the Cleveland Browns. But I also think that there's a possibility that they take one of the high-value tackles as well. So I'm kind of torn between Mekhi Lemon and Monroe Freeling here. I'm seeing a lot of Freeling propaganda lately where he is just rocketing up draft boards. I thought initially at the beginning of draft coverage he'd be available for Detroit, who we'll cover later, at 17. But now I'm thinking that's less and less likely. So the tackle out of Georgia could also be a selection here for Cleveland.
So I do have Monroe Freeling going to the Browns, but I have Freeling falling to 24. Funny enough, you mentioned Detroit a little bit. I also have Detroit picking a tackle, but I still have Freeling being available at 24. Not because he's not a top 10 talent or a top half of the draft talent. I just think there are a lot of tackles that are capable of going round 1, and I think other teams are going to choose somebody else. But Freeling's still a great option, but I think the Browns are going to get tackle, but a lot of mocks are saying that 24 is where they're going to go get that tackle. Because there are a lot of tackles in the draft.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I actually have them going tackle at 4. I think Freeling's just like a 25%er option. You know, if Tate gets taken and they don't feel confident of drafting Lemon at 6, which I have some concerns about Lemon's NFL viability. So I think that if Tate isn't available, then they could go Freeling there. But I think my final pick prediction for Cleveland would be Lemon or Tate, and then a tackle at 24. And I have them going Caden Proctor because I don't think Freeling will be available.
Okay. Both are great options. I got to pull up my player profiles a little bit. So Freeling, he's got a 72 PFF grade. PFF also says that he's best for inside zone heavy schemes. And then you said Caden Proctor. I do think Caden Proctor is actually a better tackle. He's got over 10 points higher PFF grade. He's massive. He's 6'7", 366. He's absolutely insane. And so he's one of the tackles that I actually have going before Freeling. But I think the Browns are set if they get either one of those guys.
Definitely. I do
For the
think
wide receiver, too.
I do think Freeling will go before Proctor, just because of the way that the draft boards are falling right now. But yeah, I think that the Browns will most definitely come out of the first round of the draft with a wide receiver and a tackle. I just think the most likely two are Lemon and Proctor. You're saying Tate and Freeling?
Yes. My mock 2.0 has Tate at 6 and Freeling at 24. Yes.
Gotcha. I would struggle to see teams continuing to pass on Freeling into the 20s. But it's possible because he's a very like traits-based guy. Freeling is. He has limited number of starts. He's not like a Blake Miller or a Francis Maui Noah who has more starts under his belt. He's got a lot less experience, but I think that he's one of the higher ceiling guys in the draft. But I think that wraps it up with Cleveland. Are there any guys that you had in your notes that we missed out on?
Not really for the Browns. There's a couple other. CBS Sports has Caleb Lomu from Utah going at 24. I think it's a real possibility, just depending how the tackles fall. But wide receiver and tackle really does seem to be the fits for Cleveland.
Gotcha. So I think we can safely move on to Cincinnati, who I had trouble mocking to because of what I had said earlier in another video. I was a pretty strong proponent of Kansas City selecting Caleb Downs at their selection. We've already covered Kansas City in a previous video, so if you haven't watched that, make sure you tune in. But I think it's becoming less and less likely that Kansas City selects Caleb Downs. A lot of people are mocking Reuben Bain. A lot of people are mocking, whichever edge rusher that falls. And a lot of people are mocking Maui Noah to Kansas City. And nobody's mocking Downs. So I think that Downs could then go to Cincinnati. I think that they need a lot of help on defense. I think that he's the best defender in the draft. He just is at a position with less positional value attached to it at safety. I think that it would be a slam dunk for Cincinnati to go with Caleb Downs.
I agree. I'm very high on Caleb Downs. As a Chiefs fan especially, I would love to get Caleb Downs. But I don't think Downs is going to be available. I don't think he's going to be available for the Chiefs. And if he is, I really think they're going to go get Caleb Downs if he is available. I know we're talking about Cincinnati, not the Chiefs, but as a result, due to that situation, Kansas City picking at number 9, I don't think the Bengals are going to have a shot at him unless they make a trade to jump the Chiefs. So if he's available at 8, then the Bengals could trade. I believe it's New Orleans that have pick 8. They could make a trade for New Orleans to go get Caleb Downs, especially with the safety, the desperate need for a safety in Kansas City. So in my mock, I don't do trades because they're so unpredictable and you just never know what's going to happen. So I don't predict trades. So I've got Cincinnati going with the Penn State guard. You're gonna have to help me on the pronunciation. Ione?
Yeah, I think like Vega Ione or Vega Ione.
He's
we know who you're talking about.
He's someone that on my player profiles, I'm big on him. He's I've got so many notes. I got to find his name. Offensive line, Ione. He had an 87 PFF pass grade. Last year, he allowed just 4 total hurries. And by my knowledge, I don't think he allowed a single sack. Joe Burrow has been hurt multiple times because of horrid offensive line. And if you can go get a guy that did not allow a sack and only allowed 4 hurries all season, that's huge. Joe Burrow is so expensive. And when you are paying so many expensive offensive weapons, you've got to keep your quarterback healthy to make sure that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the other massively expensive guys, can be successful too. You've got to protect that offense. So I've got them going guard there. I think that's a reach for that guy at number 10, but I think he will be worth it at 10.
Yeah, and I do think it's a reach, not because he's a bad player, just because 10 is really, really early to take a guard because Vega's a guard, right?
Mhm.
Vega Ione. So I was leaning more on kind of the expert consensus. Daniel Jeremiah, Gordon McGinnis, uh, Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com, Gordon McGinnis of Pro Football Focus, Josh Edwards and Mike Renner of CBS, and Todd McShay all have Caleb Downs going to Cincinnati, and I agree with them. I think the general consensus is that Caleb Downs is no longer being considered in the top 5, and he's not really considered among the teams from 5 to 9. So I think the highest he can go is Cincinnati at 10, and that's kind of what the experts are saying. I also have Vega Ione going just a few picks later, and we'll talk about that here shortly. But I
Is
just don't
there a
think that.
reason that Caleb Downs is no longer being considered top 5? Because to me, I haven't wavered on my support for Caleb Downs. And maybe that's just because I saw the Chiefs have bad safeties. So I'm like, he's a safety.
I think a lot of it's just prospect fatigue. Like it's overthinking it. I think that Caleb Downs was riding a lot of hype from the combine, and now it's kind of waning off, and people are moving back to more positional value type guys like tackle, edge, and really just tackle and edge. And then those few like blue chip guys like Styles and Love, which are being projected in the top 5. But I
Mhm.
just think that guys like Bain have surpassed Downs. I think guys like Love are going to be selected before Downs, and I think there's a potential of 2 receivers going in the top 10 with Lemon potentially at the Browns, and then Carnell Tate potentially going to the Giants or the Saints, somewhere around there. So I think all of those high value receiver, tackle, edge are pushing Downs back slightly in the draft, just slightly. And that's why he falls to 10 instead of like 9.
Okay. And that does make sense. I'm kind of the only one that does have them mocking guard. Caleb Downs is a CBS favorite. Mel Kiper, along with a couple writers at NFL.com, have them going the various cornerbacks. So secondary does seem to be the consensus for Cincinnati.
Yeah,
And
and
you're probably more right than I am on it.
but I think that this draft, and this is something that Tyler and I have discussed off of the air, is this draft has been so much more difficult to predict than last season. We had a lot of success last season, despite the comments in our live stream last year. We actually got the top 9 or top 10 picks in the correct order, not the correct teams because there were lots of trades that we didn't really foresee, but the players in order we picked. And so I think that
I think we got also like 13 out of the first 15 also.
yeah, it was a pretty great run for us. But that was also due to the fact that there was a lot of consensus around where the top 5 players were going, and then with that consensus, we were kind of able to make more educated guesses on the next 5, and we guessed right. This year, we don't even know who's going at 2. It could be David Bailey, it could be Arvell Reese, and that throws you off completely because if the Cardinals were high on one but not the other, the Cardinals could then go Francis Maui Noah, and then everything is in the toilet as far as the draft analysis is concerned. So whether Downs is available there or not is still quite up in the air. I think a lot of the analysts are also just kind of guessing this year. There's a lot less consensus, I would say.
I agree with that. Another team that just is right in the middle, that so many things in the first 10 picks that dictate really the rest of the draft is Baltimore, who's picking at 14. Is there any consensus on what Baltimore might be doing?
It's funny that we just talked about the lack of consensus, and I saw almost every analyst say that guard Vega Ione is going to go to the Baltimore Ravens. I have seen more mocks connecting that prospect in that team than any other prospect in team besides Fernando Mendoza this season. It is close to my next biggest lock this season. I am more confident that the Ravens will, especially with news that dropped just hours before recording. In Daniel Falele, the guard for the Baltimore Ravens, just signed with New York to follow his former head coach. So they were not going to get – I don't think he was very good last year. It would still be a need if he re-signed, but now he's not with the team. So now there's 2 open guard spots in Baltimore. I think they have to fill one of them by drafting the consensus best guard in the draft early on.
And I think that actually changes my picks with that, because earlier in the week when I did my research, I was actually thinking tight end or corner. That's some other mocks that I've seen, but with the news that you mentioned of 2 open guard spots with one of them signing with this former coach, yeah, I agree. It absolutely goes with the guard spot. I've already admitted that I'm probably wrong on the Bengals selecting guard, and if I am, then yes, there's no way he doesn't get to 15. He goes to 14 to Baltimore.
Yeah, and I didn't even have an alternative selection here because I'm so confident. I did see some corner. There's a possibility they go McCoy because Nate Wiggins and some, but they invested highly in secondary last year. They have Humphrey, they have Starks, Malachi Starks, who we talked a lot about last year. They still have Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. So secondary is not a true need like it is some of the other teams in this top bracket, like Kansas City or Cincinnati. So I would struggle to see Baltimore make a crazy pick like secondary at 14 when they so badly need offensive line to maximize the prime of both Lamar Jackson and the never-ending prime of Derrick Henry. So I just think it's fairly logical.
I agree. I think you had mentioned McCoy. McCoy is a good alternative if they don't go guard, or if I do end up right and Vega's not there. But it does seem to kind of be one or the other. If Vega's there, that's a lock. Put in the money. Bet the money. If not, which secondary is best available?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they would go who I'm mocking here to this next team, which is Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that they also need a guard after Isaac Seumalo left for the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Steelers would not take a flyer on a late first-round quarterback like they did Kenny Pickett. They've made that mistake once. I don't think the new regime is going to do that again. I think Rodgers will be back, even though he has not re-signed. So I think they shore up the offensive line by picking the second best guard in the class, and Emmanuel Pregnon. But I'm curious what you have Pittsburgh doing, because I was seeing a lot of their mocks saying Vega as well, but I just don't think he'll be there. I just don't. So I had to kind of go off on my own.
I agree. One of the mocks does have Vega falling, and I agree. I don't think he's going to be there. So tackle is another alternative for Pittsburgh. I see Caden Proctor and Monroe Freeling being tackled to, or being mocked to Pittsburgh, obviously depending on different situations. My personal mock 2.0 has Spencer Fano, because I'm big on some of these tackles. I think Spencer Fano is going to be the best available at 21. I see a lot of teams picking a tackle, but Spencer Fano, that tackle out of Utah, 83.9 PFF grade, 6'6", 308. He's powerful with explosiveness. He's a good fit for outside zone schemes as well. That's all according to Pro Football Focus. I think he's a very good late first round tackle.
Yeah, and speaking of PFF, I did want to at least bring up Pregnon's grades. He was an 86 overall PFF with an 85 run block and an 88 pass block. He only allowed 5 pressures last year as an interior player. He would be a great fit for any guard needy team. That was also at Oregon, which is so weird to say, against Big Ten competition, right? So it's not like he's a slouch. But I don't hate the analysis of going tackle there either. I think bolstering the offensive line in the late 20s, especially in a class this deep, makes a lot of sense, especially with how good the Steelers' defense was last year.
When I researched Pregnon, he is someone that stood out to me a lot. Is there a reason that he's in the 30s on some big boards? Is it just because he's a guard, or is there any weakness that we're overlooking?
It's low positional value, and he's older. He'll be 25 at the start of the season. So it's hard to justify taking a 25-year-old guard with a top 20, top 30 selection, right? That's kind of like the same argument as to why Akeem Mesidor is falling outside of the top 10 when he's one of the most efficient pass rushers in the draft. It's really just age, but he's got great experience. I think he's a plug and play option and perfect for a team like Pittsburgh, who's in win now mode with their veteran quarterback and aging defensive core. That's why I'm mocking him there, just because, you can't really afford to take a flyer on Caden Proctor, who's a developmental player, when you need starters now. And that's what Pregnon will give you. Oh, hey, Peanut. But
I love Peanut sightings on.
Peanut loves draft
on our
coverage,
show.
you guys.
Absolutely. We need to get Peanut on some merch.
I know. We need a That's DPI Peanut shirt. I remember a few, like last year's draft coverage, we had a thumbnail with her in it, and that one got a lot of clicks just because, now she's encroaching on the screen. I might have to lift her up. I'm sorry, Peanut. But I think that's the end of the Steelers. We kind of had that discussion about Pregnon. We like him, but, he's not going to be as good as coveted, I guess, as Vega Ione would be. So if you're ready, we can move on to the division of the hour.
Zach starts smiling. He's like, "Is it time? Is it time for the Lions yet?"
I appreciate
Zach,
you not.
It is time for the Lions.
I appreciate you not making me wait till the last episode of draft coverage to cover my team. But I am wearing my Aiden Hutchinson jersey, one of my favorite selections in the Brad Holmes era. And would you like me to start with the Lions? I think I can.
Yeah, absolutely. You've earned the right to start with the Lions.
So I've done a lot of research on this selection. And the hardest part about it is I don't know who's going to be there. If you show me the board from the Lions pick at 17, and if you showed me the first 16 picks and then gave me the board available, I could probably with 99% certainty tell you who they were going to select, because I almost know their draft board rankings. The problem is I don't know where half of these guys that I think the Lions really like are going to go. So I have two options here. The first one is one that you've just mentioned, is Spencer Fano. I think that he is absolutely the right guy. And here's why. I'm going to give you a lot of reasoning. He's a very strong athlete. He has a 9.86 raw athleticism score, which is something the Lions look for all the time. They love the height, weight, speed type of guys. He played and started in, which means he never did not start a game, 37 out of 37. So he started in every game he'd appeared in, and it was very durable, which is something the Lions also should be looking for after having Taylor Decker, who was a little bit injury prone, leave their team last year. He's just 21 years old and allowed 5 pressures all season. And the only reason he's not ranked above guys like Francis Mauigoa is his arms are a little short at 32 7/8. But do you know who else has shorter arms? For context, the average is like 34 for an NFL tackle. But you know who else has short arms? Penei Sewell with 33 1/4. So it's clear that the Lions don't necessarily look at that as a deal breaker, especially when 21 years old, 5 pressures, super athlete. And he's no character concerns for Fano. However, a lot of other teams really like Fano as well. So I think that another player that they may take if Fano goes before is Monroe Freeling. But I'm curious who you have the Lions taking.
I have like to go with what you said at the beginning too. Whoever falls, that's who is going to tell us. But yeah, I think best tackle available. Period. Just best tackle available is going to be that. I see a lot of Monroe Freeling mocks to Detroit. Funny enough, and this is probably going to be my worst take of our draft coverage, is I have Francis Mauigoa falling in my latest mock. Early on, I've got lots of edges. I've got wide receivers. I've got guards. And I don't have a tackle being taken until Detroit at 17. Realistically, I know that that's probably stupid to say that Francis Mauigoa is going to fall to 17. So I do like Francis. I do like Francis Mauigoa, but I do like Spencer Fano and Monroe Freeling for Detroit. Best tackle available is Detroit's.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention a distant third option. A lot of experienced Lions writers are kind of preparing for the worst case scenario. It's we Lions fans, we like to do that, right? Because it often happens. So if there is a run on tackles, like Baltimore says to hell with Vega, we're going to take Fano and move him to guard because that's something that's been discussed due to his short arms. And then, the Cardinals take a tackle, the Chiefs take a tackle, the Cowboys take a tackle. Like there's plenty of teams that could. There is a player that has been mocked to the Lions a lot by Lions writers who know a lot, and it's Blake Miller. 54 starts. He's a super plug-and-play guy, but he plays solely right tackle. And the reason that I think that a lot of people are looking at that is because Dan Campbell talked about moving Penei Sewell to left tackle. And so that would indicate to me that in the draft, they're targeting guys that could be playing right tackle. Now, Fano has positional versatility. He has played left and he has played right, but most recently he played right and he played right dang good. And so that would also be an indicator that they could potentially move Penei over to make room for Fano at right. But there's consensus there that Blake Miller could be a sneaky selection there at 17. So know those three tackle names. I'm putting it at a very low chance they select any other position than tackle. Like you said, best tackle available or highest tackle on the Lions board, rather.
Because in my opinion, I think the Lions board would maybe be the only ones that have Blake Miller at a high mid first round tackle. So if the Lions do choose Blake Miller over, say, Monroe Freeling, say Spencer Fano's not available, and they choose Blake Miller over Monroe Freeling, are you happy as a Lions fan?
I am, because it fills a position of need, and I don't think that Blake Miller's bad by any means. He's 22 years old. He had an 83 pass blocking grade last year. And he's beyond durable and beyond experienced. And really what the Lions need is experience, because I feel like, next year might be their best year to capitalize on all of their talent and the age groups they have. After next year, the salary cap gets tighter and the players get older. The Lions window is now and then maybe later, but definitely now. And Blake Miller has 900 or more snaps in the last 4 collegiate seasons for Clemson. And he's a super high character guy. And so I would be happy with it, only if they didn't skip over guys that I view as better. Like if everyone's gone and they still go Blake Miller, I'd be thrilled. But if they skip over guys like Fano or Freeling for Miller, maybe I'd be less happy. But he's only 22 years old.
You mentioned their window. Our next team is also kind of facing a possible window. Maybe it's been closed from a couple years ago, and that's the next pick right behind you guys, the Minnesota Vikings. 14-win team just a couple years ago. 14-win team just a couple years ago, because you guys got that 15th win.
That's right.
What is happening in Minnesota?
Minnesota, yeah, tiny Coca-Cola here. I think the Vikings are in an interesting spot because Kevin O'Connell in recent interviews, I don't know if it was like a 40 and slip or something, but he was talking offensive schemes and immediately was only talking about Kyler Murray. So I'm assuming that they're going to start Kyler Murray. And if they do, I think it's safe to kind of classify the J.J. McCarthy selection as a colossal failure, because he not only got injured for his entire rookie year, he came in and stunk. Like truly one of the worst rookies I've seen in quite some time. And then he didn't instill enough confidence, and they had to go out and sign Kyler Murray, a veteran. So I think the Vikings are going to ride their defense, have Kyler Murray try to resurrect his old like 2021 or 2018 form when he was throwing to Fitz or DeAndre Hopkins, but with Justin Jefferson this time. And I think they're going to draft Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon, one of the best safeties available in the draft. It's really between him and Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. They have to replace or at least prepare for the retirement of Harrison Smith, the hitman. He's been their stalwart at safety for 15 years, and he has not yet returned to the team. He's not yet decided whether he's going to come back for a 16th season. And even if he does, it's smart to have a plan. It's smart to have a chess piece to add to the Brian Flores defense. And that's what Thieneman is, an outstanding performance at the combine. And I think he would be a great fit. And I think that they're mostly set at every other position besides quarterback. But I'm curious your thoughts.
Remember how last week, like every single mock had Akeem Mesidor to Tampa Bay, and we're like, yeah, like this is the answer.
Sure.
Dylan Thieneman is that guy this week. So many mock drafts, including my own personal mock draft, have Dylan Thieneman going to Minnesota. Caleb Downs, of course, won't be there, and I don't think McNeil Warren is better than Thieneman. I think he's going to be a later first-round guy. So Caleb Downs is going to be your early first-round pick. Dylan Thieneman's going to be your mid-first-round pick. And then McNeil Warren, that safety out of Toledo, is going to be your late first-round pick when it comes to the safety position. I think he's a great fit in Minnesota. There's not a ton of safety-heavy needs in the draft, so it just kind of falls right into place. They're good at wide receiver. They're good at other parts on the defensive front. They just need that safety, and I think that's something that they've been lacking these last couple years.
Yeah, and it's hard to find a deficiency when you look at Thieneman. Maybe the only thing that you'd want is a little taller. He's only 6 foot, 200 pounds. But he makes up for his lack of height with his tremendous 4.35 speed. He's also got a 41-inch vertical and 18 reps on the bench. I think he will slide right into the Brian Flores defense, maybe become someone that they use on blitzes, and someone who can cover running backs and tight ends flawlessly due to his rangy speed. He also has an 89.9 overall PFF grade, which is 8th of all safeties, and 90 coverage grade, which is 8th as well. And he even has an 81 pass rush grade, which means he's no slouch when being blitzed. So I'd be really interested if Minnesota decides to go any other option, quite honestly.
I think you're reading the wrong notes. I think you're reading my notes instead of your own notes, Zach, because I also have Dylan Thieneman be focusing on that excel in coverage and in run support as well, along with pointing out that 90 plus PFF grade too. So the fact that he's only 6 feet instead of 6'3", 6'4", I don't care if I'm a Vikings fan. Not that that's like a major thing against him, but he's such a good safety. Coverage and run defense is definitely that Harrison Smith type safety that they need back.
For sure. But moving on to the third team in the NFC North, which actually placed first in the NFC North this year, it's the Chicago Bears. They had a miracle season with numerous crazy comebacks in both the regular season and their playoff games. And they really want to try to keep that momentum going. And the first step is maximizing the 25th pick, which will be uncharted territory for Chicago because they have been picking high in the last 4 drafts. It feels like, whether it was due to trades or just plain being not very good, right? But I'm curious where you have Chicago going at 25, because I had a little trouble mocking to them.
Pick 25, I've got them going interior defensive lineman. One of the things that has just always made the Bears good is maximizing defense. If you can give Caleb a little bit of help to make it less cardiac-like, that would be great. But the Bears always thrive when they have good pass rushers. And to me, it becomes best defensive tackle available, whether that be Christian Miller out of Georgia or Peter Woods out of Clemson. Those are 2 guys that I'm really looking at for Chicago.
Okay, that's interesting. I also have Peter Woods at that spot, but he's not my primary option. I have a player in which the Bears utilized a top 30 visit on, which I think is noteworthy, and is a huge position of need for them because they have Montez Sweat at edge rusher, My goodness gracious, Peanut. But they
Just look straight into the camera.
They also don't have really anyone opposite of Montez Sweat. And the player they used the top 30 visit on was Zion Young out of Missouri. Someone who's projected to go in the very early second round, maybe late first round if there's a run on edges. But I think the Bears, who drafted another Missouri player highly last year in Luther Burden, could be potentially looking at drafting Zion Young early than his projections because of his upside. I think he's very athletic and showed out at the combine and really improved his draft stock, maybe enough to where the Bears consider selecting him in the first round.
Zion Young is definitely a good player. 85 PFF grade, 6'5", 260. He's tall and he's lean. The problem is some of my research suggests that he is limited in the pass rush game. That's what the Bears really need, is good pass rushers. That's just like historically, whether it be recently with Khalil Mack a few years ago to their current roster to even back in the 85 Bears. They need a good pass rush. And if the big limitation is pass rush, I would be very hesitant with Zion Young going to Chicago at pick 25. If he falls to 57, which currently he's number 40 on the PFF big board, so him falling to 57 wouldn't even be that big of a stretch. I remember another Missouri defensive player a few years ago, and Nick Bolton. He was a guy that people were mocking first round. He fell to the second round of the Chiefs. I can see that being a Zion Young situation. If he falls to 57, it'd be a good pick for Chicago, but I would be very hesitant with him at 25.
So here's some additional analysis to maybe give some more credence to the Zion Young. I've seen the same projections about his pass rush, but that applied for his first 3 seasons. Okay, he never had a pass rush grade higher than a 72 on Pro Football Focus, but he doubled his pressures from his junior season from 26 to 57 with 8 sacks, which was more than double his career high before that. It actually doubled his entire sack total in his first 3 seasons. So 57 pressures, 8 sacks, and he even improved his PFF grade to 82.7. That's on top of having an 86.6 run defense, which you'd expect from a guy who's 6'5", 262. And the Bears ranked 27th in stopping the run last year. So getting a guy that has a little bit of juice in the pass rush, I would say he's developing in that spot, considering the jump he took last year, right? But also getting a guy that they can throw out there for all 3 downs to help them stop the run and help improve what was a pretty bad rush defense last year. I think that would be something they would be really interested in. He's also only 22, so it's not like he's a Mesidor guy where he is a known quantity. I think that you could develop him even more than that. But Zion Young certainly is a riser in my eyes, solely because of the teams in the later parts of the rounds who could be looking for a player that fits his mold.
And maybe that is the case. Maybe the team fit is going to be very good for Zion Young. It's just something I would be hesitant. I'm curious on what my Bears fans friends think about what Chicago wants. Whatever they pick, James is going to be mad no matter what. No matter where the Bears pick, he's going to be mad. So we'll see what he thinks about this pick.
Sure. And we only have one team left before we get to our ref call of the week. So you ref call of the week fanatics, hold off for one last team. They don't even have a first round pick, and they're a team that I loathe entirely. They are the Green Bay Packers. They traded away, of course, their first round pick for Micah Parsons, who sadly tore his ACL and will be not available to start the year. So the Packers are in a really bad spot because not only do they have a crazy expensive salary cap by paying Jordan Love way more than he's worth, but they also are paying Micah Parsons a lot of money to not play to start the year and probably have a fair amount of ramp-up time going into next season. So safe to say the Packers really have to maximize the picks that they have after the first round, and they first pick at 52. Now, I don't know if you had any notes on them, Tyler, or maybe what their needs are.
I don't have any specific players matched up for them, just since the 20th pick of the second round is their first. But edge rushers and defensive tackles and corners, really a lot of defense. The Packers need a lot of defense, specifically up front. And so maybe some of these early second round guys that are no one that we've talked about, because it's going to be players that shouldn't be in the first round, but those nice day 2 picks that fall a little bit down to 52, the end of the second round that maybe thought was going to be first round, might end up falling to Green Bay. But that I would look for Green Bay to add to the box.
And what's interesting is I don't have them adding to the front seven, only because I think that room is fairly complete. There's a lot of competition there. They have a huge need at corner, in my opinion. They lost some guys to free agency, and the guys they lost to free agency weren't even that good, quite honestly. So adding a corner should probably be one of their top priorities in those first 2 picks that they have. And a guy that I project to be available is someone named Chris Johnson. And that's not the Titans running back. That's not CJ2K. That's Chris Johnson from San Diego State. So a lot of the reason why I don't think this guy is being talked about in the first round is because of the competition that he plays again. But he's a 21-year-old corner with a 91.6 overall PFF grade and a 92 coverage grade. And he was one of the best corners in football in terms of PFF. That's second and third, respectively, in those rankings out of 900 eligible players. So he was clearly excellent. He's also only 21. But obviously, how much can you really extrapolate from that if the competition was not really that good, if he's not covering anybody? Also, that was his best season of his 4 seasons. He never really topped 75 before that. So it's kind of like an outlier. But I think the Packers are in a position where they need to take a risk and take a corner that could provide them a lot of upside. And I think Chris Johnson is that guy.
I think it'd be great. They absolutely need some corners. I just think with Micah Parsons being out, he's targeting a week 3 or week 4, but it's very likely that he could miss the first 5 or 6 games. And that's who they really went all in on last year. And if you're going to go all in on that guy and then miss him, obviously last season, but the first 6 weeks of this season, you've got to find someone to replace him. And that's part of why I think some experts are looking to go up on the defensive line front. But corner is definitely an excellent choice as well, because they do need that as well with the departure of Jair Alexander.
Yeah, and I don't hate the interior defensive lineman, because that is one of the worst position groups in the league when you're talking about Green Bay. Some of the guys that are ranked by Pro Football Focus, Devontae Wyatt, Warren Brinson, and Carl Brooks, the highest ranking of those guys is 87th out of 127. That's not where you want to be in terms of defensive tackle talent, especially when you're missing your top edge rusher, kind of like you said. So I could see that happening as well. But it's just a matter of who their GM decides to go with. And I think this is a make or break year for the Packers front office and their head coach. A lot of rumors about firing Matt LaFleur were swirling last year. And I think that if he doesn't perform this year, 3 straight years of barely sneaking into the 7th seed, no division championships in the Jordan Love era, you have to consider, is that good enough in this year, in today's NFL? Especially, is that good enough to justify the mortgage of the future that they did to get Micah Parsons?
Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility that because the NFL is in an offensive dominated game right now, and Matt LaFleur, he really kind of gets credit for being an offensive mind genius, whether that be true or false, we can debate, but that's the narrative that he gets a lot. Is there a possibility that they go offensive player?
I think so, only because they did lose their starting tackle in Rasheed Walker. So it's a possibility that they select, one of the better offensive linemen available, but I don't see them trading up for one. just because they already lack draft capital. So it really could depend on which offensive linemen remain available outside the top 50. But I don't think they go skill position after the investment they had in Matthew Golden last year. As underwhelming as he was, they still invested a first-round pick in him. And they also have Christian Watson and Jaden Reed, and Tucker Kraft will be returning from his injury. So I think pass catcher is good, and Josh Jacobs is still their running back, so I don't think they go running back top 50 either. So I think it would be wise for them to bolster that defense.
Maybe nothing crazy. I was thinking about Christian Watson's injury, but it's not expected to be long term. So that never mind. I was a little bit concerned about that, but no, never mind on that.
It's wise to be concerned because he's injury prone, and he could always re-aggravate it again. But I think that he should be ready for the preseason.
Yeah, it's not the ACL like Micah Parsons is, where he's going to miss at least a couple weeks. It's not that. Okay. Right. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what Green Bay does, because especially it's so hard to predict this year's draft alone, let alone who's going to be there at 52.
Exactly. We can only speculate.
If the Packers are smart, if the Packers do go offensive skill set, though, this is Matt LaFleur getting desperate. If they go offensive skill set.
Sure. And while we're on the NFC North, before we move on to our ref call, we had a tiny, tiny nugget of stadium updates for you Chicago Bears fans that you recently sent to me, Tyler, if you wanted to cover that briefly for 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah. So the Chicago Bears are, of course, trying to figure out what's going on at their stadium. The Illinois state legislature is trying to figure it out as well. They want this. The Bears want this. So this is a couple days ago from Adam Schefter. I'm just going to read you what Adam Schefter posted. So the Chicago Bears will decide where to build their new stadium within the next few weeks, per league sources. If Illinois doesn't pass legislation for Arlington Heights soon, sources believe that the Bears are likely to be Indiana-bound.
Yeah, and
this is massive.
Yeah, this was reported on, a month and a half ago, and there was a lot of jokes about the Indiana Bears. But this is serious. I mean, this is an all-time fumbling by the Chicago legislature. I mean, I think it's even worse. Sorry, the Illinois legislature, my bad. But it's even worse to me than the Missouri legislature that lost the Chiefs. Officially, they've lost them. I think it would be even worse because the Bears are a more historic franchise. And, to just disregard that, especially after their best season in years, what are they thinking? Why is Illinois, do you know why Illinois is being so stingy?
Well, I don't like talking politics on our sports show, but the Illinois legislature has always had a sense of corruption within their state house. And that's not even me taking a political side. That's just like they've had scandal after scandal. And so the Illinois legislature historically just doesn't know what they're doing. And there's this big movement right now that the states shouldn't pay for stadiums, billionaires should pay for stadiums. And that's a great tagline to be like, hey, taxpayers shouldn't pay for stadiums, billionaires should pay for stadiums. The problem is that's just not how it works. If Indiana is willing to pay for a stadium, they're going to go to Indiana because billionaires don't have that liquid cash. A lot of the Hunt family is one of the richest families in the NFL ownership. All of their wealth is tied to their assets being the teams that they own. They don't have $44 billion of cash on hand, which is part of why billionaires start going towards legislators like, hey, can you help us fund a stadium? And they're just being stubborn. Like, they're unjustly being stubborn. The legislature's unjustly being stubborn.
Yeah, I think it's a part of that kind of societal push, right? To push back on the wealthy class. And I think to a certain point, I get it. But when you're talking about a massive publicly available, event space that will be used year round, it's not like it's, just the Kansas City Chiefs stadium or just the Chicago Bears stadium. It's a concert hall. It's a draft Thest location. It's, in some cases, it can be used as a natural disaster rescue area, like the Superdome was for Hurricane Katrina victims, right? Like, these stadiums are used for so many purposes that benefit the public, not just going to sports games, but the amount of money that they bring into the surrounding areas, the amount of business that the NFL and by extension stadiums and teams bring. So I think that's really what the billionaire owners are looking for, is just like, hey, this is more of a joint venture rather than me just funding everything, because I benefit you too. And I will be available to you, the public, through all of these different things, right? Like, look at Kansas City hosting the World Cup in their stadium. I don't know. I know that that's a different scenario because they lease Truman Sports, but it's still the logic applies.
I just did a little bit of live research. This is from illinoispolicy.gov, so it's at least a government organization from Illinois. They're definitely admitting that there's a lot of pressure on the legislature, and they're also putting a lot of blame on the Bears, saying that it would cost taxpayers a lot. It says the proposed initiative package, and this is a quote from illinoispolicy.org. It says the proposed incentive package would be devastating for Illinois' property tax crisis. A rushed negotiation process and intense pressure from special interests could be disastrous for taxpayers. So I don't know exactly what the tax proposal is, but the state legislature is definitely citing that taxpayers would feel a lot of devastating effects if they funded the stadium. So that's at least where they're coming from. I'm not involved in Illinois politics, so I don't want to comment too much on that. But that's at least where they're coming from.
Yeah, and it was similar situation in Kansas City where the taxpayers would have to continue to pay a tax to fund the renovations at Arrowhead and at Truman, and they voted against that. So I don't know if there's a similar vote going out to Illinois and Chicago residents, but I assume that there probably is, or at least some sort of proposals going up about extended taxes. But we will continue to update you.
Updated.
Yeah, we will make sure that once we have more news, we will give you said news. But moving on to our final segment of the day, it is the Holy Roller.
This is an old one, but it's a rule that almost always gets put in effect in close game scenarios. Well, oftentimes gets close scenarios. Zach, you want to explain this and show the clip of what we're about to watch from this barely colorized film?
I believe it was a 4th down late in a game between the Raiders and the Chargers. And Ken Stabler, or I think this is Ken Stabler. It makes sense because he's the lefty. Ends up just throwing. It's hard to see, so I might slow it down for you. But he throws this underhand, kind of rolls it almost, hence the name. I'm going to slow this down just slightly so that we can see all what we're looking at. But he rolls this underhand, and it goes all the way down to the end zone, where tight end Dave Casper is going to pick it up. I think it ends up getting squirted around a little bit. That one's almost thrown forward by number 40 there. Intentionally or not, you can argue. But Dave Casper is going to end up picking this up in the end zone in what would be the game-winning touchdown. And it was fairly controversial after the fact, as many game-winning crazy plays are, like, going back to Franco Harris's immaculate reception, a lot of controversy surrounding that. But it ended up resulting in a rule called the Holy Roller Rule. And I'll pass it to Tyler to explain what that rule is and what it restricts about that particular play.
Yeah. So again, if you're new to this segment, our off-season segment, since there's not current football to break down, is we are doing calls that changed the rules. So this was ruled a touchdown because there was a fumble that resulted in the Raiders recovering in the end zone. That's a touchdown. Afterwards, they made a rule stating that if there is a fumble inside the 2-minute warning, that's key there because this is fourth down. It's game. Oh, actually, I think we're also on fourth down.
Yes.
Any fourth down or any fumble inside the 2-minute warning. If the ball is fumbled, it can only be advanced by the person who fumbled the ball. If it is not recovered by the one who fumbled the ball and it is picked up, it is returned. The play is dead and it is returned to the spot of the fumble.
Yeah, and you are correct. If a player fumbles after the 2-minute warning in a half or overtime or on fourth down at any time during the game, only the fumbling player can advance the ball, right? And so that would obviously make null and void the holy roller because Ken Taylor would have been the one who had to recover it, not Dave Casper. Worth noting that John Madden was the head coach. John Madden was the head coach for the Raiders and the main beneficiary of the holy roller play. So that's kind of one of our biggest throwback calls that we've ever done. I think it's the second oldest thing we've discussed on the podcast. I don't know if you can name the first oldest thing, Tyler.
The first oldest thing?
Older than 1978.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is if we had discussed like a stat and used the phrase since the merger, referring to the 1970 merger, but I am unaware of something older.
I was mostly referring to our most anticipated game segment where we covered the 1967 Baltimore Colts season, where they played a game, essentially a playoff win-in scenario in the regular season. That is the oldest NFL moment that I think we've covered on the team. So this would be one of the older ones for sure.
It is. Now, this rule is important, though, not just because, like, oh, it changed a little nuanced rule, but if you're ever watching a game and the ref says, hey, it was fumbled, but we're returning the ball to where it was fumbled, this is the holy roller rule. Even if it's a legitimate fumble that was not planned, if it's fourth down or inside the 2-minute warning, it has to go back to the spot of the fumble unless the fumbler is the one to pick it up. Then they can advance it.
Yeah, I mean, it even cost the Chargers a late touchdown in a Chargers-Raiders game in 2020, way beyond almost 50 years after that game, when Justin Herbert was trying to QB sneak, lost the ball, and it was recovered by a fullback in the end zone. But since it was inside 2 minutes, he was not able to advance it. Justin Herbert would then score on a sneak the very next play, so it was not talked about as big as the holy roller. But, you know, I'm sure that you will pay attention this year. I guarantee you that it will happen at least once in a game this season in which a team fumbles on fourth down and is not allowed to advance it besides the fumbling player.
The more you know. The Raiders have always been up to no good. The Raiders have always been a bunch of cheaters.
Yeah, you would say that. But
although I guess they didn't cheat at the time. It was a legal play at the time. But afterwards, the NFL said, no, you can't do that.
It was kind of like when the Chiefs employed a very tall individual to try to swat balls out of the field goal posts back before that was banned. But that one's even less consequential than the holy roller. But that is all we have for you today. If you want a specific call, if you love this segment, make sure you throw down in the comments like, hey, I would love to hear you call this rule out, you know, or this play. And if we have not covered it, we will certainly make sure that we get it covered this offseason because we're trying to get through all of the calls that changed the game. But thank you guys.
We will listen to our comments. Earlier this year, we talked about the Burt Emanuel rule. That was a fan suggestion. If you know a rule, let us know, and we'll cover it.
Yeah. That being said, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave a comment down below, and we will catch you guys for our final week of draft coverage next week.
Appreciate you guys.